My name is Corey, and I lived in the States ever since I could remember. It was around 6 p.m. one night in the winter, and I was staying at my girlfriend's family vacation house due to a snow blizzard. It was our second week there, and the surroundings were astonishing. The house belonged to my girlfriend's grandparents before they passed, and ever since then, we'd always go up there for the winter. Now, the blizzard wasn't too strong, but the snowfall was coming down hard with about 2 feet of snow. We had just eaten lunch, and after that, I decided I'd go on a walk like I always do. I know, stupid to go out in a blizzard, but it was mild and didn't really pose a threat to us. The house was very close to a forest in the mountains, as this was a more rural part of the state. Going outside and enjoying the cold winter forest looked and felt amazing. My girlfriend had even said she would make us some hot cocoa while I was gone. Now, the forest I normally hike in has two separate paths, one that has a more rocky terrain and one that doesn't. Playing it safe, I decided I'd take the trail with the least amount of treachery, as I knew there was a risk of slipping due to the slushy ice. Without hesitation, I go through the more smoother trail and didn't think anything of it. I've been through both of these trails in the past, but I didn't feel like doing anything extreme. So there I was, walking through the woods listening to one of my playlists when my iPod died. Annoyed, I take out my phone and record a few videos of my hike to post on my Instagram story. Not that anyone cared, but I liked recording my experiences wherever I went. It was up until this point that I had been hiking for about a half hour now and was debating on whether to call it a day. However, there had been a small forest clearing just up ahead and decided I'd take a look around. Upon entering the clearing, I immediately noticed strange objects laid out in the snow. The strange part was that they were neatly arranged in a sort of pyramid-like structure. I move a few feet closer, and it was then when I realized that these so-called objects were bones of what seemed like a giant animal. Maybe cow, maybe a horse, or even buffalo. They were completely clean and sun-bleached. This meant that someone out there had placed these on purpose. What that purpose was, I have no idea. I was just on this trail a few days before and had seen no bones. There were also a few bones that were alike and had been neatly arranged in a circle that laid in the snow. Suddenly, the snow began to pick up as I stared down at the bones when I got the feeling that I wasn't supposed to be here. It was then when I heard quite a ways into the woods a loud snap that echoed across the trees. I take a quick photo of my discovery and try my best to run back to the house. All the while, I'm taking big steps into the deep blankets of snow, going as fast as I can. I make it back to the house and show my girlfriend the picture I took. She began to freak out as well, and we both thought why someone would go through the struggle to do this. I'm still not sure if it was just some punk trying to scare people or something much worse. Either way, I haven't been back up there since, but my girlfriend's parents have. This time, the bones were gone.
I live on a remote, quiet street in a relatively small town. For the sake of my safety and privacy, I will not disclose the town, as I still live there to this day. It was the last day of school before Christmas break, and like any other ninth grader, I was excited to be home and play the new Call of Duty that was coming out that year. A little background here: since I was in the 6th grade, I always walked home. Today was no different. I left school around 2:37 p.m. But this time I had to take a different route home, as my street had construction. I remembered a shortcut from when I was a little kid that I used to take to school when my road or usual route was blocked or closed due to some reason. I started making my way down the side road as I did years before when I noticed a black Ford following me awful close. but doing the speed limit probably to avoid suspicion. I took a few turns to see if this vehicle was following me, and sure enough it was. I eventually made it home, and when I did, I told my parents, who then passed it off as being over-paranoid, and that was that. Fast forward a few days, and it was Christmas Eve. No sign of that car and no further incidents, until 11 p.m. rolled around, and we were settling in for bed. I remember doing my routine when my dog started barking. I yelled and said, "Shut up." I eventually got up and let them out. I want to say 8 minutes passed when I was startled out of bed, a man screaming in pain outside my window. I looked up to see my dad with a shotgun running outside to the dogs. I rushed out of my bed to the window, and just as I got there, I heard my dad yelling at this guy. And then he shot the back of the guy's black Ford speeding down our road. A police report has been filed, and it's been 4 years since the incident, and I'm now finishing school and looking at colleges. The police never found him, and I still sleep with my dogs by my bed, so the man who tried to ruin my Christmas doesn't come back.
Christmas Eve with my 6-year-old son was one of the most memorable nights of my entire life. Sure, we'd had a bunch of Christmases before that, but being a 6-year-old marked the first time that he really started to understand the whole Santa thing. He became completely fascinated with the idea that this fat dude could just shapeshift down the chimney, not to mention how he could visit every single child on the planet over the course of one night. He started begging me and his mom to take him to Santa's grotto so he could meet the man himself, and when it came to leaving out cookies and milk, he insisted on leaving out an entire package of Pepperidge Farm, believing the more cookies we gave Santa, the better his presents would be. It was absolutely adorable, and it totally rekindled any of the festive spirit me and his mom had lost over the years. So, on Christmas Eve, we leave out the whole bag of cookies, top up Santa's glass of milk, and then I take him upstairs to bed. He's way excited about the possibility of Santa arriving, which poses something of a problem for me and his mom. If he was still awake when we started putting presents under the tree, he might come downstairs, see us eating the cookies and arranging all the boxes, then his festive fantasy would be totally ruined in my mind. We agreed that was totally unacceptable, so we waited until 1 a.m. when he was completely out for the count, before we dressed the scene like Santa had visited, even including a little note thanking our son for all the cookies, saying he was the most generous little boy he'd ever had the pleasure of delivering to. We were so stoked to see his reaction in the morning, so much so that even we had trouble sleeping that night. But just like our son, the adrenaline subsided eventually and we both drifted off to sleep. The next thing I remember, my son is standing by my bed, shaking me awake and whispering, "Dad, wake up, wake up." I can see the little glow in the dark hands of the clock on my bedside table, and they're telling me it's just before 5 a.m. So as much as it was obscenely early in my mind, I knew I had to get up if I wanted to see his face when he opened his presents. All this is going through my head, and I'm just about getting ready to slip out from under the warmth of the covers when my son says, Dad, Santa's downstairs." My first move is to look over to my wife's side of the bed, but instead of being downstairs like I thought she might be, she's lying there asleep next to me. I'm instantly struck by this uh-oh moment, thinking that if my son had just heard someone downstairs, actually heard someone, it obviously sure wasn't Santa Claus. I remember telling my son to wait where he was as I crept towards the doorway, listening out for any sounds coming from downstairs. Believe it or not, it wasn't just his imagination. He was right. I could hear someone downstairs. By this time, his mom had woken up and she's asking what time it is, but all it took was one look from me as I reached for the little lockbox I kept my gun in, and she just knew something was wrong. She was just amazing about the whole thing too, just totally affirmed why I wanted to have children with her in the first place. She just started, "Come to Mama, come get a Christmas cuddle," and all this other stuff, just completely distracting our son despite him insisting he wanted to go meet Santa. I closed the door behind me, crept towards the staircase, then felt my heart pounding as I started to descend. As soon as I saw the two people crouched down by our tree, I raised my pistol and just growled, "Get out of my house!" As soon as they heard me, they just bolted back out the window they'd pried open to get the presents under our tree. I thank God they didn't put up any resistance, that they didn't even say anything before they just jumped out the window. I know of many other confrontations like that where the homeowner came out way worse, and I thank God every single day that I didn't end up as one of them. To me and my partner, it was nothing short of a miracle that the only casualty of that morning was our son's hurt feelings. He was furious that I hadn't let him meet Santa Claus, and no matter how much we tried to explain that Santa was busy and that he couldn't stop to talk, our son cried and cried, all up until we showed him the special note that Santa wrote for him. And that really did the trick, especially once I improvised the idea that Santa had written the note because he was so grateful, even though he was super busy. Now, me and my partner are still wondering how we're going to tell him about that once he's older. We know it'll be something we'll be able to smile about. I mean, no one got hurt, thank God, and I know it'll be funny to see his reaction to the truth, but in that moment, it was just about one of the most terrifying occurrences of my entire life.
This took